রূপের ওই প্রদীপ জেলে কি হবে তোমার, কাছে কেউ না এলে বার। মনের ওই এত মধু কেন জমেছে, যদি কেউ না থাকে নেবার। রূপের ওই প্রদীপ জেলে কি হবে তোমার।
Thank you. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Kolkata Centre for Creativity, as Pramila ji said, on behalf of all of us here. And it's a pleasure to be in conversation with you this evening.
Thank you.
And for many of us, particularly when I was going through your book, we know you as a political journalist. We know you as someone who's made a name for herself as a primetime news anchor. And then what made you shift to writing this book that looks back on the life of a legend, and a book that also, in a way, covers the history of Indian cinema and music in
Yes.
Indian cinema and otherwise? So, if you
Yes.
could throw some light on that, we could kickstart our discussion from there.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Priyadarshini ji, very much. And to Pramila ji and the entire team of KCC who've decided to bring my book and mark Talat Mahmood's centenary with so much love here in the city of Kolkata, in a city which was so close to his heart. And due course of our talk, we'll realize so close to his career as well. Honestly, people presume that yes, I wrote this book because he was my grand uncle and I was personally so close to him and connected to him. Undoubtedly, that is one of the reasons. But I tend to think as a journalist, I was in love with his story because we're more about finding exciting stories, and this is perhaps one of the biggest story that I've ever written because the book runs into about 90,000 words. And his identity, apart from his popular identity of being the king of ghazals and this dashing film star and singing star of the golden era, I felt that his personality had so much more than just being that iconic singer or someone who was a pillar of the golden era, because so many surprising facets to his personality that I discovered, knew about, but discovered so much more in the course of my research, that he was an adventurer, very adventurous spirit, because he was the first playback singer from India to start global concerts, which was very early in 1956, which was just 10 years into being a new nation and 10 years into establishing golden era. And he was an activist, very surprising. You listen to him, soft voice, you see his face, sweet charming smile. Can someone like him be an activist, put up a fight? And he did that. He was the first to speak about as a collective force for the industry on the royalty rights for playback singers in the film industry. So all of these were very interesting aspects and then just made his story really incredible. So I felt I just had to write his story. Yeah.
That's true. I mean, for someone as fascinating as him, and as you rightly said, so many interesting facets to
Right.
this personality, obviously makes him somebody that, I mean, who you can write about and write about so extensively. And the what I noticed when I was going through the book, that your book actually covers a very wide span of time, and
Right.
particularly for someone like him, because he was a pre-independence celebrity,
Yes.
and from there moving into becoming a post-independence film star,
True.
and someone whose career came right into the 1990s and his concert tours. So when you were researching, I mean, how difficult was it for you to cut across this whole graph and present it to us in the book?
Yes, it was a question of stringing together decades and decades, and stringing it together in a manner which is easily understood and readable for today's reader.
Exactly.
When I say today's reader, I'll be partial if I say that, or prejudiced rather, if I say it's just for the youngsters who have a very short attention span. But I think because of our social media and digital medium, we are also, our generation is also increasingly becoming used to fast paced reading
Right.
or books that you can finish and flip through. Our habits and patterns are also changing. It's part of our evolution as well. So, for all readers across ages, um, it was a very conscious thought in my mind, which I kept in mind throughout 2 years of working on this book. कि ऐसा ना हो कि किसी पढ़ने वाले को लगे कि बहुत भारी है ये किताब. It's about history और बहुत boring है या बहुत भारी है. It's too heavy on the head, heavy on the mind. So I broke it down. The book is broken down into multiple sub chapters, like what a digital reader today is used to. Scrolling through on our digital feed, we're used to headline clicks. So every sub chapter is like a headline click. You get into that sub chapter, it's about 5 6 pages, maximum about 10 pages, and you move out of it. Even though the book is moving chronologically
Yes.
with his life, but the chapters can be read separately in and out of it. And threading it all together in a timeline was a challenge, undoubtedly, because there is so much. Like you said, we are talking about 1924,
Yes.
when he was born, his birth. So I had to leave my news studio, take a break from everyday political news and current affairs, because I knew I had to transport my mind to a lot of different time zones. So I was like in my mind time traveling, and I couldn't do that with handling everyday news. So I stepped away from my studio and tried to place myself in those eras. So 1924, जब उनका जन्म हुआ, it was British India.
Yes.
So what was Lucknow like in British India? What was the ethos of the city? What was it going through? हमारे जो conservative family है. I mean, we're from a very culturally engaged Muslim family. Like we did bethaks of shairi and musiqi and mushaira and ghazal gaiki, all happened in the courtyard of our house. We were patrons to a lot of artists, a lot of known artists. Even Begum Akhtar ji used to come to perform. So we were patrons of art, but still conservative. You know, couldn't was getting commercially engaged in arts or earning from it was frowned upon. And then when I shift to the 1940s, when he came to Calcutta, what was Calcutta like at that time? It was the commercial capital, this powerful city for British India. And then post independence, how things for showbiz shifted to Bombay, then the Art Deco feel of Bombay establishing golden era, and through the evolution of technology as well. जैसे 1980s में industry में stereo sound was introduced, how technology changed, how he moved with the times. I mean, he in 1965 technology had changed and he decided कि अब market में उनके जो 1940s और 1950s के LPs available नहीं है, so people couldn't hear his songs. So he re-recorded his 1940s and 50s hits in 1965, so people could buy and rehear them again. Then really in his global concerts, traveling through right up to the 90s. So everything had to be fit in the timeline. I mean, there was so much, even though there's so many stories from families and so much available archive, but all of it had to be fit in place and verified. There's so much cross checking, fact checking and verification that I had to do of all these stories. क्योंकि खानदान में भी जो stories बताई गई, अगर एक incident बताया गया कि 1955 में ये हुआ, and then I would calculate the timeline and think कि नहीं, it's impossible. It probably happened in 1952 instead of 1955. So much of that cross checking had to happen as well. So yes, a lot of journalistic work.
I think this is the ideal time for us, because you mentioned it, to move from his home, Lucknow, and come to Calcutta. I am specifically saying Calcutta because it was Calcutta
At
then
that
and
time,
not
yes.
Kolkata. So the fact that Talat Mahmood makes this decision to
Yes.
move away from home and come to Calcutta, and that's his first stint that we
Yes.
see in music. And he actually became a star here first and then moved to Bombay.
Absolutely.
And as I know, I mean, for my parents, my grandparents, he was Tapan Kumar, as they used to say in those
Yes.
times. But that also makes such fascinating reading.
Thank
So
you.
I want you to tell us a little bit about his pets and also his tremendous love that he had for fish. I even remember reading that, and
Yes.
it was so interesting because if there are stories related to that which most people don't know, please
Yeah.
share with us.
Well, this was when he used to stay in Park Street, and and from there he would go to new theaters every day, or sometimes to Dum Dum
Or
Studio,
the gramophone
the
company.
gramophone company. And so he used to stay at Park Street with his elder brother, and they were two bachelors living in an apartment, and so they had two pets. One was Charlie, who was a dog, and Freddie, who was a monkey. And Freddie was, of course, kept so that he can clean Charlie's fleas. And but Freddie turned out to be smarter than Charlie. He used him as his ride, and every evening they would walk down, and Charlie would like literally try to ride uh, the dog, and the neighborhood was fascinated by these two. So that's of course one of the funny stories, but a lot of lovely, sweet memories that he had. And even when he shifted to Bombay in the 1950s. For Hindi films, he would keep coming back to Calcutta and record more Bengali songs. He would keep coming back for cultural engagements. The Dover Lane Festival, jo hota hai yahan pe har saal, he used to keep coming back for that. Yes, in the 1960s, 70s, he kept coming back. He never forgot Calcutta. And
Because I'm just coming in here,
yeah, sure.
I think there's the influence of one person which was very strong. That's Pankaj Mullik in his
Yes,
life in Calcutta, and that is something that's undeniable. I mean, you have to keep that in mind.
yes.
And also, when he is making this transition from Calcutta and going off to Bombay,
Right.
do tell us a little bit about the influence of Anil Bishash in his life. And
Yes.
because writing says that Anil Babu was like his godfather in
Yes.
Mumbai. So tell us a little bit about that.
So I would say Pankaj Malik Sahab was his mentor for modern Bangla music, because when he recorded his first commercial recording that he had here after completing his education from Lucknow and shifting here, he recorded Tasveer, that very famous ghazal, which is uh, तस्वीर तेरी दिल मेरा बहला न सकेगी ये तेरी तरह मुझसे तो शर्मा न सकेगी. So that was such a blockbuster hit, an Urdu ghazal, and the landmark for a hit, a yardstick for a hit in those days when it was released in 1944 was that you sell 300 copies of that single. But this ghazal sold 1 lakh copies. So it was like beyond a blockbuster hit that anyone had ever thought. So he kind of, Calcutta immediately embraced him. He entered the city and he was a overnight star. तो पंकज मलिक साहब ने बोला अब हिट हो गया तुम्हारा गाना, and now that you've shifted to Calcutta you sing in Bengali. So he said ये तो मुश्किल चीज़ है क्योंकि मेरी ज़िंदगी भर की तैयारी उर्दू शायरी में और गालिब एंड मीर तकी मीर एंड गज़ल गायकी, मेरी पूरी तैयारी उसी में रही है। आप समझाइए मुझे मैं अब बंगाली कैसे करूँ। सो ही सेड आई विल हेल्प यू, एंड हमारे जो म्यूजिक डायरेक्टर है कमल दास गुप्ता, अनदर आइकॉनिक आर्टिस्ट, ही विल हेल्प यू जो भी तुम्हारा प्रोनाउंसिएशन प्रॉब्लम हो। And you keep singing in the name of Talat Mahmood for Hindi and Urdu songs, but when you sing Bengali, I will give you the name of Tapan Kumar. So he named him. Pankaj Malik Saab named him Tapan Kumar, and he kind of um, tutored him for modern Bangla. That's how Talat Mahmood is also one of the pillars for modern Bangla music. Because
No, but you know what you just mentioned? It's so fantastic because this gives you an insight into the dedication of an artist. You know what you said, that someone whose this language was alien to him,
yes,
but his dedication to the craft. And when we just heard the clippings, I mean, all of us sitting here will agree that no one can doubt that it's a Bengali singing because the intonations are all in place, the pronunciations are just like a Bengali person would be.
no, but that's what people believe, that he is
He
a
was a
Bengali boy.
Bengali.
I think his stint and success in Bengali gave him the confidence to sing other languages. Because later on in his career, he ended up singing in 16 different languages. He sang in Assamese, a duet with Bhupen Hazarika ji. Then he sang in Malayalam and Telugu down south. In Marathi, he was awarded Marathi Singer of the Year by the government of Maharashtra. I mean, Gujarati, he kind of just perfected it for singing. And I think his Tapan Kumar phase gave him that confidence. Yeah. And the other name you mentioned, Anilda,
Yes.
Anil Biswasda, um, that was for his beginnings in Bombay. So, like I said, Calcutta always immediately embraced him, gave him immediate love, immediately made him a hit, and gave him his beautiful wife as well,
Yes.
my Bombay Nani. And when he went to Bombay in the 1950s, because after independence and partition, the commercial capital was transitioning to Bombay. The film industry was transitioning to Bombay. So he said that if I have to continue, I should for Hindi songs, I have to try my luck in Bombay. But he was very confident that I'm an established name, Bombay will be a cakewalk. But you know what Bombay is, the character of the city. It will always test you and put you through trials and tribulations, no matter what you are, who you are. You have to get that taste of Bombay to enjoy the success. So in Bombay, they didn't like his vibrato, the natural vibration that he has in his throat. And they said कि ये vibrato modern Bangla के लिए अच्छा है and it sounds good in ghazals, but Hindi film में हमें नहीं अच्छा लग रहा ये. So a lot of music directors who later, of course, all of them lined up and wanted to work with him, but initially they all rejected him. And by the time he met Anil Biswasda, he became so conscious. they उन्होंने अपना जो ऑडिशन उनके लिए दिया बिल्कुल सीधी सीधी आवाज में दिया. He controlled the vibration and just sang straight. So Anilda ji was horrified. He said, "Who is this? I had called Talat Mahmood. Who are you? जब तलत महमूद आ जाएंगे तब आप आइएगा गाना गाने." So he said, "नहीं बहुत मेरे विब्राटो को डांटा गया है और ऐसे बोला जा रहा है." He said, "नहीं, this is your strength. This is your USP. और हम दोनों मिलके we will ensure कि this becomes your most in demand quality." So, and I think क्योंकि अनिल दा का जो style था, because he was also so iconic and pioneering, he started what we understand today as the structure of mukhra and antara and orchestral compositions. That was one of the first few people was Anilda who started this, or using a 20-piece orchestra. So I think he was used to that operatic style as well, and he liked that vibrato. So they recorded his first commercial hit in Bombay in 1950 from the film Arzu, which was on Dilip Kumar Saab.
आज लूंगी मैं आगे जा मेरे सनम शामे बंदी कसम वही शाम वही गम वही तन्हाई है दिल को समझाए तेरी याद चली आई है वही शाम सब कुछ लुटा के होश में आए तो क्या किया सब कुछ लुटा के होश में आए तो क्या किया मगर शराब जलाए तो क्या किया मेरी याद में तुम ना आंसू बहाना नदी को जलाना मुझे भूल जाना समझना के था ये सपना समाना वो गुजरा जमाना मुझे भूल जाना मेरी याद में
As you very rightly pointed out, the Dilip Talat partnership was that. And the song that struck gold for them together was, which Anil Da had composed, which was "Ae Dil Mujhe, Aisi Jagah
जगह
Le
ले
Chal,
चल.
Jahan Koi Na Ho." All of you can sing along also if you want. ए दिल मुझे ऐसी जगह ले चल जहाँ कोई न हो. So this was iconic, and उनकी personalities और मिजाज बहुत मिलता था, because this professional partnership translated into a very strong personal friendship as well, to the extent that even though professionally their journey became different after his tragedy king phase, in the 1970s and the late 60s. Dilip Kumar Saab started doing different kind of roles. The partnership was for the tragedy king phase. Okay? You could not separate Talat's voice from Dilip Kumar's tragedy king phase. That was the partnership. And I say this everywhere because I can't better it. One of our filmmakers, Muzaffar Ali Saab, he had come for one of my book talks, and he said he turned it around very beautifully, without sounding offensive, because he said that मैं तो ये कहूँगा कि तलत साहब की आवाज़ ऐसी थी जो दिलीप कुमार साहब को अमर कर गई. So he turned it around for the singer versus the actor in that sense. But he put it across so beautifully, and it also defines that partnership best. And so many songs, and especially in Devdas, 1955 Devdas, jo Mitwa jo gana hai, which is like just his naked voice and the saraki, nothing else. Just brings me to tears just thinking of that. It's so emotional, so heavily loaded with sadness and loss. You so much so that you can hear the breath of Talat Mahmood while he's singing, and so beautifully enacted by Dilip Kumar. That Talat Nana, at that time I said that one of the biggest compliments I got was that people actually thought कि दिलीप साहब खुद गा रहे हैं. तो इस तरीके का वो they were in sync with each other. और friendship की बात करें तो we became like family friends, you know, wives and sisters and all coming home and family dinners together. Right till very late, जब 1980s में Bombay Nana released a ghazal album which was called The Comeback of the Ghazal King. उसको inaugurate करने दिलीप कुमार साहब and Saira Bano had come to launch that album. So it remained a very close partnership and friendship. Yeah.
We have to traverse so much in such a short span of time. So I'm going to take a bit of a leap.
Okay.
Today we see all our singing stars, they crisscross the globe. Someone's performing in Dubai today, Delhi tomorrow,
Yes.
Australia day after. I mean, it's so common now. But
Yeah.
I think here your Nanaji was a pioneer because this concept of world tours and someone from India doing it from Bombay, but to take it across the oceans. And at
Yeah.
that point of time,
बिल्कुल.
what was the push?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
In my understanding, is just the firm belief, the conviction that this is a genre of music and an identity of India that needs to be heard outside as well. I mean, it was heard outside in the sense that HMV was selling records overseas anyway. There were shops which were selling these records, but he used to get a lot of fan mail from outside. And then he said that I must reach out to my fans and followers who want to listen to me live. So in 1956 was that first trip to East Africa, and where East Africa was a collection of African countries under the British at that time. There was Tanzania and Kenya and Nigeria. तो वहाँ पे बहुत ज़्यादा सक्सेस हुआ उनका टूर, मतलब दे वो बुक्ड फॉर आई थिंक 15 shows and they ended up doing 30 shows क्योंकि वो बैक टू बैक इतनी डिमांड हो गई. They're very interesting adventurous stories of his concert tour, especially the first one that he took, wherein which I'm very fortunate. During my research, I got to talk to his concert manager of 1956. He just passed away a few months ago, Mr. Nandi Duggal in Bombay. But when I was writing the book, he was in his 90s and he was very happy to, recollect all those memories. So it was an experiment for everyone because आप पहली बार bookings कर रहे हैं, tickets book कर रहे हैं, and then organizing all the sound equipment and the team and the orchestra और सब जा रहे हैं बाहर. Um, but it turned out to be a huge, massive success. Once he was taking during that tour, he was taking a train from one city to Dar es Salaam, Tanzania's capital. और उनकी ट्रेन एक शहर बीच में आया और उनकी ट्रेन रास्ते में रोक दी गई या स्टेशन पे रुकी एंड इट वाज नॉट अलाउड टू लीव. तो वो घबरा गए, वो समझ रहे थे पता नहीं क्या बात हो गई, तो उनके कंपार्टमेंट में लोग घुस गए. एंड देन दे सेड कि हमें आपसे बहुत शिकायत है दैट यू आर डूइंग ऑल दीज शोज एवरीवेयर अराउंड डिफरेंट सिटीज और यहाँ स्टेशन पे गाड़ी रुकी भी है एंड यू डोंट हैव अ शो हियर, तो आप अभी उतरिए एंड यू डू अ कॉन्सर्ट फॉर अस. तो दोपहर को ट्रेन रोकी गई और शाम को कॉन्सर्ट करिए. एंड ही सेड बट आई विल मिस माय शो इन दार es Salaam. He said no, we'll send you our fast cars, don't travel back by train. So and it was so sweet. He was so touched because उनके पास एक सिनेमा थिएटर था उस शहर में. It was not an auditorium as such. तो दे सेट अप दैट सिनेमा थिएटर टू मेक इट कॉन्सर्ट रेडी. और लोग घर से कुर्सियां लेके आए जस्ट इन केस सिनेमा की कुर्सियां कम पड़ जाए. So it was all a collective effort of so much love and longing for Talat, that he was very touched. But it's just one of the examples, what was the response. And then when he came back from East Africa, back to Bombay, तो उनके दोस्तों में बहुत चर्चा हुई. It was like buzzing. Talat is back from this concert, and Mukesh ji or Lata Didi and uh, all were like saying कि बड़ा success हुआ show. So then they started with his friends started touring, and I think somehow he set up a route map for his friends because wherever he went, it became the talk of town. So from East Africa, he further shifted to Europe, UK at the Royal Albert Hall and in Manchester and other cities of London. Then from there, further to the United States in New York. And there are many Indian cultural clubs in America that were set up by him because he was the first to perform. So in Minnesota, they were celebrating when I was writing the book 2 years ago. They were celebrating 50 years of their club, and it was set up and established by Talat Nana because he was the first to perform, and they kind of had to register it as a club and foundation to officially invite an artist. So there's a club in New York and Dallas, many such places. And in New York, at the Broadway studio, there was a very popular talk show, Joe Franklin's Tonight Show. Like you have the Jay Leno show or the Jimmy Fallon show. So that was used to be the Joe Franklin show, and usme he was introduced as the Frank Sinatra of India, and very interesting because I was going through the official invite that was sent to him to be in the show. Um, he spoke in English, of course, to Joe Franklin, and then they interspersed their conversation with his songs, Hindi songs, and an American audience sitting and listening to all of that. It's amazing how he could relate to so many people. Then in the late 80s, he started touring the Gulf, the Middle East, because Indians started working there as well. So he was one of the first to perform in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia does not do concerts. Now, of course, it's opening up. There, it was banned to do it in public places, so he did it privately. The first to perform in Dubai. So he was very adventurous.
Uh, Moving on from there, you mentioned this right at the beginning, and I'm going back to that now. That for someone who is such a personality, so mellifluous, and with that kind of an amazing voice and the softness and everything, um, he was also one of the first political activists in Mumbai. For his co-artists, for singers, and we know that there is this chapter, very interesting phase of his career where he is the one who is leading the mic down protest.
Yes. I think because he was traveling so much, he observed what other international music labels, how they dealt with their artists. And I think royalty rights was established in the West far earlier. And here in India, Lata Mangeshkar ji had raised it first uh, in a personal capacity. Matlab, she raised it for her songs. So when Talat Nana became the head or the secretary of the association, in those days in the early 1960s, एक association का नाम था Playback Singers Association. So when he became the secretary of that, उसमें he decided कि let's raise this now as a collective force. ये नहीं कि एक आदमी या एक singer individually, सब एक साथ as a collective force, let's come together. तो लता दीदी immediately got on board, and his friend Mukesh ji was there. फिर gradually दूसरे artists join किए, मोहम्मद रफ़ी साहब और आशा भोसले जी, they joined. So so I kind of coined it as the mic down because we're used to, in political news, we're used to bureaucrats and all, or journalists doing a pen down protest. So I kind of turned it around and coined a mic down, where you literally put your mic down because studios were shut. Can you imagine for 3 months, 3 महीने के लिए अगर आपके रिकॉर्डिंग स्टूडियोज बंद हो जाए तो आपका म्यूजिक लेबल और आपका फिल्म प्रोड्यूसर का क्या हाल होगा. सो दैट वाज द माइट ऑफ दैट प्रोटेस्ट. उसमें फिर बाय द एंड ऑफ 3 मंथ्स कुछ सिंगर्स घबरा गए कि हमारी तो आमदनी खत्म हो गई, सो दे स्टार्टेड रिकॉर्डिंग ऑन द साइड. तो वो प्रोटेस्ट फिजल आउट हो गया. But I still look at it as the first formidable step, so to say, towards that cause. Yeah.
While going through your book, there was one thing that struck me, that your writing is sort of interspersed with a lot of lyrics from his songs. And, it's obviously translated very beautifully. For people who haven't read it, when you read it, you'll understand what I am actually referring to. So, just take us through very briefly about, I mean, what made you choose these and how did you contextualize it also in your
Wow.
writing? Because I was very fascinated by this
Wow.
interspersing.
So kind of you to say that, and what a beautiful observation. Thank you. So I have this book at home, which is his Geet Kosh, like a dictionary of songs. So Talat Nana was the first singer जिनके नाम एक गीत कोश रिलीज हुई, डिक्शनरी ऑफ हिज सॉन्ग्स. उनके एक फैन थे, उन्होंने ये किताब कंपाइल की थी. And remarkably, I mean, in his career, he sung about 800 songs. तो उनके फैन ने इतनी डिटेलिंग की कि उनकी जो शुरुआत की टीनेज एज की, जो उनके लखनऊ AIR के गाने थे, और फिर उनके कलकत्ता के गाने और फिर बाकी सारे रीजनल सॉन्ग्स एंड सो मेनी नॉन फिल्म गजल्स बिकॉज ही हैज अ होल पैरेलल करियर इन नॉन फिल्म गजल्स एज वेल एंड द फिल्मी सॉन्ग्स एंड अदर रीजनल सॉन्ग्स वो सब कंपाइल करके सो यू हैव दैट गीत कोश so it gave me a chronological idea of all his apart from of course the Bombay golden era songs which are very well known but the others so when I read those songs I tried to relate it to what was happening in his life at that time. Like for example, if we take Mitwa, a very popular example of Devdas, तो उसी के आसपास उनके वालिद साहब का इंतकाल हुआ था. His father had passed away around in 1955. So he had just freshly come back from Lucknow conducting the last rites of his father, and then the studio was waiting for him to record for Devdas. So when we hear Mitwa, when we hear that grief, it is part acting of Talat's voice and part personal grief as well, you know. So there was a lot of correlation of what's happening in his personal life. Jaise, during partition, he recorded two, three Desh Bhakti songs for India. And partition was very traumatic for everyone, especially in 1946, in which there was a build up to the partition and the independence movement. Kolkata mein jo, what is it called? The Great.
The
Yes,
Calcutta killings.
yes. So, matlab curfew laga hua tha sab jagah. So he went through that. He experienced that, and he saw with what pain India has. I mean, of course, a remarkable independence movement, but also that has come with so much pain. And then and his conviction to stay in India as a Muslim family, you know, the decision that he took to stay back in India, in believing in the secular spirit of the country, especially because differences became even within family. You know, like his father and him decided to stay back. His father was active in the independence movement, and then one of his brothers had decided to move to Pakistan, and the other brother was in East Pakistan at that time. Um, was in Kolkata but later went to Dhaka. तो families भी split हो गई. तो उस वक्त उन्होंने ये दो देशभक्ति गाने रिकॉर्ड किए फॉर हिंदुस्तान. So it was also songs that an artist sing or the artworks or paintings that an artist makes are also felt at a very personal level, and you can relate it to what's happening in that person's life at that point of time. Yeah.
Thank you for this amazing contextualization because that gives you such an insight into not only the artist but what the artist is feeling and thinking.
Yes. Yeah.
We could go on and on, but I think this is the right time for me to pause and see if we have any
Okay.
questions.
All right.
Anyone has any questions for Sahar?
We didn't see too much of
Yeah.
Talat Mahmood in the late 60s and the 70s as much as we did in the 50s.
Absolutely.
What did he keep? How did he keep himself relevant in the playback scene? Because we haven't heard too much of Talat Mahmood in the 70s as much as
Okay.
we had in the 60s with
Yes.
Jana and all that.
Yeah.
But it was more in 50s and early 60s. But late
Yeah.
60s, and somehow, I don't know,
Yeah.
we managed. That is one.
Okay.
The second is Naushad had a follow up with him during Babul, I think. That was, I think, but they came back together, I think, in Army
Yeah.
later on. But why is it that Naushad didn't take him for playback later on? Maybe in the 70s when Naushad was still around, maybe not
Right.
prolific.
No, even his career was tapering off, Naushad Saab's. But to answer both your questions in one answer, because they're all relate, both questions are related. So his last commercial hit per se was 1964, जो आपने जहाँ आरा सुना फिर वही शाम और जो उसकी बाकी गजलें हैं. Late 60s mein the music scene completely changed because we had the Beatles, we had Elvis, strong rock and roll influence on Indian music as well. So orchestra became louder, and Talat Nana's voice was very soft, and he knew it. He knew his forte, and he didn't want to sound silly in loud orchestra. He knew what his strengths were. So he decided to gradually withdraw
Was there some bit of
himself.
a bias? Was there some
Let
bias between music directors? Because I think there was a bit of a bias. Somehow he wasn't
See, you know, when you're in the creative industry, you are chosen for what's working best at that given point of time. So it's not as if he was inactive. His last film recording was in the 1980s. There was a K. Asif film which was released in 1980s. Um, no, God and Love and God.
Love and God.
So his last recorded, one of his last recorded songs is in Love and God, and but he was touring. 1968 onwards, he was heavily touring across the world. Um, ये हम लोगों को लगता है कि नो प्लेबैक सिंगर का करियर खत्म हो गया क्योंकि अब हमको उनके नए गाने सुनाई नहीं दे रहे, बट इफ यू लुक एट कुमार शानू और एन उदित नारायण टुडे आपको लगेगा करियर ही खत्म हो गया, बट यू नो देयर इज अ सेपरेट चंक ऑफ अ कॉन्सर्ट करियर, आप उसको कॉन्सर्ट करियर मान के चलिए. सो दे आर स्टिल वेरी एक्टिव सिंगर्स. सो सेम फॉर तलत नाना. His fallout with Naushad was understandable. I've addressed it very directly in the book. As a journalist, I don't mince words, so it's all there, very transparent, very direct. And that was the thing. It was a fallout because there was a trend of version songs. आप एक गायक से गाना गवाइए, जब तक फिल्म रिलीज हो तो दूसरे गायक से वो फरमाया गया होगा. सो चल उड़ जा रे पंछी was also one such example. It is recorded both in Rafi Saab's voice as well as
The original
Talat
was in
Nana's
Talat
voice.
Mahmood's voice.
Yes, so radio used to play the Talat version of Chal Ud Ja Re Panchi, and in the film it was Rafi Saab's version. So this happened a couple of times, and twice it happened with Naushad Saab itself. So there was a fallout, and but I think in the 90s, Naushad Saab tried to make up for that because when his Geet Kosh, the song dictionary, was launched, so Naushad Saab was the one to launch that dictionary. And when Talat Nana passed away, Naushad Saab ne, while speaking to Doordarshan, he said, Talat hamare तगज़ुल ग़ज़ल थे. मतलब he was the ghazal himself. I mean, that is a phenomenal thing to say. That not a ghazal singer, he is the ghazal himself. So I guess things happen in life, and when you're talking about creative people, a lot of such friction happens. So
I think all good things come to an end, but thanks so much for being here at
thank you for your
KCC.
questions. Beautifully researched and felt.
I think
You've read
we
the book
can
and you felt it.
we can
Thank
credit
you.
the education wing for that. It was a joint effort by my colleague and me, so we'll take that credit. And thank you so much for being here this evening.
Thank you.
And for those of you who haven't read her book, do take a copy because I can see there are many connoisseurs of music here.